Quite recently, I attended an equality, diversity and inclusion training, and I was sat in a room with 100 people, and I just wanted to cry. Not because the content was cruel, because it wasn't. The deliverer, the person delivering, had done all of her research. It was just textbook. Definitions, acronyms, politically correct language guides. How they are affected. They. A room full of people, and I mean well-meaning, genuinely well-meaning people who desperately did want to learn, were taught how to talk about other humans as if they were a condition to be managed. And I sat there thinking, I'm one of those people. I'm who they're describing. And I didn't feel seen. I felt labelled. And I'm sure that wasn't the intention. Stay with me. Let's find a different way to do things. Something I want to ask you today, not what neurodiversity is. You can Google that. I want to ask you what happens in your building, in your meetings, in your hiring processes, because that's where the gap lives between the policy on the wall and the experience of the person sitting in your open plan office, pretending they're fine. I'm autistic, and I've spent most of my working life making sure no one could tell. I remember once, I had a manager. She'd been on the training, the exact kind of training that I described earlier. Before a meeting, she took me to one side and she quietly, kindly said, I know you can't sit still for long and you might need to leave the room. So I've put you by the door. Now, she meant well, and I really do want to be clear about that. She absolutely, genuinely meant well. But in that moment, I wasn't Julie. I was autism. She'd taken in the information from the training courses and she'd applied it to me without once asking me what I actually needed. The training had taught her about a label. It hadn't taught her to talk to the person. Here's another one. I arrived for an interview. It was running late and there was no map to find the building, no agenda, despite me asking in advance. No questions sent over. I walked in already dysregulated, already performing, and already spending cognitive energy on finding the room that should have been spent on showing them really what I could do. And let's be clear about this. These adjustments would have cost nothing. A postcode, an agenda, a 5 minutes heads up. That's it. But nobody thought to ask, how do you work best? How do you want to be contacted? What do you need to show us your best side? Not because they were being awkward or cruel. They just didn't know any different. Because the training didn't teach them to ask. It taught them a vocabulary. And a vocabulary without curiosity is just a more sophisticated way of getting it wrong. So what I saw in that neurodiversity training was the brain getting described as a problem to be managed. The person got described in terms of what they can't do, what they struggle with, what they need support for. And somewhere in that room there's a person who has that brain and they're sitting there listening to themselves being described as a deficit. Now that's not awareness, that's harm with good intentions behind it. If you do want a framework that holds up and explains behaviour without pathologising a person, look at the behaviour through 4 lenses: psychological, biological, environmental and behavioural. When you apply those 4 lenses, you stop asking what's wrong with the person and you start asking, what is this person's brain doing and what does the environment need to do differently to support it? That question changes everything about how you deliver training and how the people in your room receive it. You don't have to change everything overnight. Start with the language. 1 session, 1 swap. Notice what changes when you remove the word they. Some of the people in your training room have been spending years being described as a deficit language. You have the chance to be the first person who describes them differently. And this matters more than you might realise. I introduce you to Marcus, 38, a startup founder, great instincts and moves fast. He commissioned the EDI training 18 months ago. He ticked the box. He genuinely thought he was doing well. And in his office right now, there's Priya, 29, his best marketing brain, operates differently. Is spending 30% of her energy every single day just looking like everyone else. And she's 3 months from walking out. Now, Marcus didn't create that environment deliberately, but he also didn't dismantle it. Because the training taught him what neurodiversity is. It didn't teach him to look at his Monday morning meeting and ask, who is this designed for? So here's what I want to say. Equality, diversity and inclusion is not a training day. It's not a policy document. And it's not a gagging order on the language that you're allowed to use. It's the foundation of how you build a business. Not a stepping stone you reach once you're successful. The foundation. And the businesses that get this right, and I mean really get this right, they don't have a diversity policy. They have a communication culture. They ask the 3 questions. How do you want to be contacted? What's the best way that you work? What do you need from me today? Not just to the people with a diagnosis, to everyone. Because these questions don't create a 2-tier system. They level the whole thing. Let's look at what creating that kind of culture looks like. So let's take a Monday morning. This Monday coming, without a budget, without a consultant, without a training day. Your manager walks in. They're warm, present, not performing busy, actually present. They lay out the goals for the week, clearly and concisely. Not instructions, outcomes. What we're trying to achieve. They ask the room what they need. Not in a survey, not in a form, in the room. The lighting isn't aggressive. There's a quiet space somewhere in the building. The signage makes sense to find your way around. The agenda was sent in advance. None of that costs money. All of it changes everything. And if we're speaking the truth, every single one of those things helps every single person in that building, not just the ones with a label. The ones who are exhausted, the ones going through something, the ones who've never been asked what they need because, you know what, they look like they're fine. Not just the ones with a label. I spent years making sure no one could tell I was autistic. Years. Not because I was ashamed of it, but because every environment I walked into was built for someone else. The goal isn't a world full of labels. The goal isn't even a world that celebrates difference. The goal is a world where the question, how do you work best, is so normal, so embedded, so unremarkable that the labels become irrelevant. Not erased, irrelevant. Because the person was never the label. The person was always just a person who needed someone to ask. So if you recognise any of this, if you recognise yourself or someone on your team, that's not coincidence. The labels we carry and the ones we give other people, they shape everything. How we show up, how others show up, what we believe is possible. If you want to explore this further for yourself or for your team, come and find me at the Coaching Den. The link's down in the description.